Hi, and welcome to How to Implement Compliance at Scale with the Three Lines of Defense model. My name is Andres Silva. I'm a Principal Specialist Solutions Architect with the Cloud Management Services team here at AWS. And with me today here, I have Craig Edwards. He's also a specialist SA, and he will be talking to you later in the presentation. We're very excited to talk to you about this topic. This, in fact, is a continuation of the presentation we did at the Spring Summit this year, in which we introduced the Three Lines of Defense model to address compliance at scale. We're going to continue the conversation and give you some tools to better take advantage of this approach. Here's the agenda of topics we're going to cover today. We're going to go over some of the challenges around compliance, do a quick review of those. We're going to reiterate the Three Lines of Defense model, explain briefly what it is. And then we're going to go deep into the technical implementation of a set of samples that we are providing as part of this presentation. We call it the Cloud Compliance and Assurance Jumpstart, and it's a set of tools that is designed to help you get started in this journey. And then at the end, we'll go over some takeaways, things that you can do to continue learning about this topic. We often are asked by our customers when we have discussions around compliance, how do I get started? Which services do I use? Should I start with Security Hub? What about conformance packs? How do I use Systems Manager? And we know there's a lot of questions around this. And as we presented in the previous presentation that we did earlier this year, one of the easiest way of understanding how you can put all these services together is by leveraging the Three Lines of Defense model. This is a standard provided by the Institute of Internal Audits that establishes that in order to implement compliance at scale, you need to do it with the Three Lines of Defense model. The first line of defense is the functions that manage risk. This is where you define controls that allow you to detect any non-compliant resources and address them. This is where services like AWS Config come in, CloudTrail, Systems Manager, and many others that allow you to implement and define those individual controls. The second line of defense is functions that oversee risk. In this line of defense, you leverage services that allow you to have a single pane of glass of your security posture across all your accounts and regions that you're deploying in AWS. This is where services like Security Hub come in, but even also services like CloudWatch, Config can provide visibility into the entire infrastructure we're running. The key here is that you are able to oversee risk across your entire deployment. And then the third line of defense establishes functions that provide assurance of risk management. This is where typically an auditor will come to your organization and say, okay, prove to me that you're indeed managing and addressing risk at scale. This is where a service that we introduced at reInvent 2020 comes in, AWS Audit Manager. It helps you automate the process of collecting the evidence you need for that third line of defense. We're going to talk a little bit more about those services later on in the presentation. But what we want to do today is give you a technical implementation of these Three Lines of Defense model by providing you with some sample templates in a GitHub repository that you can download, follow along, and test yourself. These solutions should get you started in this journey and help you understand better how you can implement this in your AWS infrastructure. I'm providing two links here, one to the presentation of the Spring Summit that we did earlier on this topic so you can learn more. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend that you go watch it and then come back. And the other link that I'm providing here, or QR code, is to the GitHub repo. If you go to that link, you'll see this repository. As you can see, we have samples related to AWS Config. We have samples related to Audit Manager, and even integrations with Audit Manager in Security Hub. Now, why we are providing these samples, these templates, they're essentially CloudFormation templates. Because it is very important when you address compliance at scale that you implement what we like to call compliance as code. Just as infrastructure as code allows you to standardize, simplify, centralize all the resources and the definition of the resources you need to manage infrastructure at scale, compliance as code does the same thing for the controls you define for compliance purposes. This is a very good definition that I found in a blog from one of our partners. But essentially, compliance as code is the mechanism for you to define those controls in a domain-specific language like CloudFormation, and then have them run through a process of continuous integration, continuous deployment, where they are validated, tested, and then deployed. So instead of changing things in a million different places, you centralize the process of defining those controls and deploying them. That is super important. These samples that we're providing today will help you get started in implementing compliance as code. Now let's dive deeper into some of the different lines of defense, and let's start with managed risk and some of the samples that we're providing with AWS Config. In this repo, you're going to find samples of how you can deploy AWS Config at scale using CloudFormation stack sets. We provide also some conformance packs that you can deploy at scale using stack sets also, and other mechanisms. And we also even provide there some samples of how you can implement remediation actions so that when issues are detected, they can automatically be addressed, or that you can set up notifications so that they can be followed up and addressed also. This is very, very important when you look at simplifying compliance at scale. We also have samples of how you can deploy aggregators. Aggregators allow you to collect all the data into a single place for reporting purposes. And you'll find there in that repository also a template that will simplify the process of you implementing that. Now, let's watch a brief demo of how you can take advantage of this, the samples that we have in this repository so you can deploy them in your own environments. Let's take a look at the demo. In this demo, I'm going to show you how you can use the configuration, compliance, and audit jumpstart templates or sample templates that we are providing to deploy AWS config across multiple accounts and across multiple regions using stack sets and AWS organizations. The way this works is if you open the repository, you will see that there is a folder called AWS Enable Config. And in there, we have another folder called CloudFormation, or CFT for CloudFormation template. And in there, we have two files. One of them is Enable AWS Config. This is a very simple template that allows you to enable all the options to activate the recorder on specific accounts. We're going to use this template, but we are going to deploy it using stack sets so that we can deploy into multiple accounts and multiple regions at the same time. So let's go ahead and show you how we do that. Let's go back here to the CloudFormation console, and we're going to click on stack sets. And then we're going to say create stack set. We're going to upload a template, and we're going to select that template that allows me to enable AWS config. Let's go ahead and click next. And let's set up some options here. Let's give it a name, enable AWS config. And then there's a number of parameters that you can specify for the recorder configuration. You can specify if you want to support all resource types, if you want to include global resources. You can specify the resource types that you want to cover. If you're not interested in covering everything, we do highly recommend that you leave support all resource types enabled, but we do provide you this option in this template. There's also some options for the delivery channel configuration. I'm going to leave all those as default so that we can continue with the demo. Here I can specify permissions for the deployment. I'm going to select the default. And then I have the option here to decide how I'm going to deploy. I can either deploy to the entire organization, or I can deploy to a specific OUs in the organization. There's some additional options that I can specify. And here I can select the regions that I want to deploy to. Let's select Ohio, and let's select Oregon. Okay. Now here I can specify a number of options like deployment options, how many concurrent accounts I want to deploy. And I'm going to leave the default as 1, and I'm going to do the deployment sequential. This is going to take a little bit more time, but I just want to keep this deployment simple for the purposes of this demo. So after I have selected those options, I'm just going to go ahead and click Next. This is going to allow me to review all the options that I have selected, and now I just click I acknowledge that AWS CloudFormation is going to create IAM resources. Let's go ahead and click Submit. And now my deployment, it's going to go ahead and get started. There you go. We can see that the deployment is running. This is going to take a few minutes, so we'll pause here and come back once the deployment has been completed. So as you can see now, my deployment of my stack sets has completed. We have a succeeded status. If we go back here to the list of stack sets, we will see the stack set that I just deployed. And if I go here, I can see the result of my deployments into the different accounts and the different regions that I'd deployed to. Um, so now I have deployed my configuration recorder to these two regions, and I'm ready to go. This is a very convenient way of deploying your AWS config recorders across your entire organization. One of the advantages of this approach is that as new accounts are added to the organizations, they will automatically get this deployment if you're doing, for example, um, the entire organization or a specific OU within the organization with the deployment. And will also be deployed in the regions that you specify for that specific for that stack set. So again, this is how you can use the sample template that we provided in the configuration compliance and audit jumpstart to deploy um, your configuration recorder using StackSet. Thank you. So as you can see, using these samples, you can very easily get started and deploy resources related to AWS config to help you manage risk. Now, the other thing we should talk about when we talk about managing risk is CloudTrail. CloudTrail is super powerful auditing capabilities to know what's happening across all your accounts. Here are some key things you need to be doing when you implement CloudTrail at scale. I want to call out a few of them, but some of the most important ones are the fact that you leverage an organizational trail. That means that across your entire organization, you're sending all your logs to a specific place where they can be reviewed and audited. We also see a lot of benefit in organizations implementing multiple trails. Maybe one trail for security purpose that is locked down to a very small set of individuals for security reasons. And then you have another trail for operational purposes that you can provide to your operations team when they need to do troubleshooting and things like that. It's also very important to make sure that things are secure, locked down, they access to your S3 buckets. And one thing that is also very beneficial when you are managing risk with CloudTrail is the integration with CloudWatch logs. With the integration with CloudWatch logs, you can enable metrics that are based on information detected on CloudTrail and even set off alarms when something unusual is happening. So it's important to leverage all these things when you implement CloudTrail at scale. Now, when we talk about managing risk, is an important part of it is data protection. And with the recent news we've heard on ransomware, this has become even more evident. We provide services like AWS Backup and Cloud Endure to protect our customers or to help our customers design and implement a data protection strategy. Now, the interesting thing is that you can take the definitions you have in Cloud Endure and AWS Backup, and you can deploy config rules that evaluate if indeed you're tracking and backing up your resources in the proper way. I'm providing a link here to a solution that helps you see how you can accomplish what, specifically with Cloud Endure. Cloud Endure is a super powerful service that allows you to define a disaster recovery strategy for your organization. And the integration we're providing there helps you deploy config rules that ensure that those replication for data disaster recovery is actually happening and is healthy. This is a very good example of how you can define controls and automate them to ensure data protection. Highly recommend you to take a look at that solution to see how you can ensure you have a good strategy for data protection. So that's it about managing risk, but we want to talk about the other lines of defense also, overseeing risk and also providing functions that assure risk management. And for that, I want to invite Craig. He's going to be talking about those topics and sharing some interesting information with you related to that. Craig, please.
All right, thank you, Andres, and hello, everyone. My name is Craig Edwards. I'm also a Specialist Solutions Architect with the Cloud Management Services team. And the first thing that I want to talk to you today about is AWS Security Hub and how that fits into simplifying and automating your compliance needs. So with Security Hub, one of the best things about it is it helps us automate, mitigate, and remediate risk because it gives you a comprehensive view of your security alerts and your security posture across all of your AWS accounts. So with Security Hub, you have a single place that aggregates, organizes, prioritizes your security alerts or findings from multiple AWS services as well as AWS partner solutions. A key feature for mitigation is that AWS Security Hub offers security standards that are aligned to regulatory and industry compliance frameworks. So in addition to the AWS Foundational Security Best Practices standard, Security Hub also offers additional standards aligned to industry regulatory compliance frameworks, such as the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, also known as PCI DSS, and the Center for Internet Security AWS Foundation's benchmark, also known as CIS. Now, along the lines of automation and remediation, AWS Security Hub provides automated response, remediation, and enrichment actions. So all of Security Hub findings are automatically sent to EventBridge, and you can create EventBridge rules that have AWS Lambda functions, AWS step functions, or also important, AWS Systems Manager automation runbooks as their targets. And these runbooks can automatically enrich findings with additional data, or they can take automated response or remediation actions on those findings. So I want to go into a quick demo to kind of show you how this works. So let's take a look at that now.
I'm going to show you how Security Hub can help you take care of that second line of defense to oversee risk across your entire organization. One of the powerful features of Security Hub is that it gives you the ability of enabling findings across all the accounts in your organization. Let me show you quickly how we do that. Let's go to the Security Hub console. And the first time you go to Security Hub console, you are going to be prompted to get started with Security Hub. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, this screen is the welcome screen, and if you don't have AWS config enabled, it will prompt you to go ahead and enable it. It'll also ask you to set up some security standards. By default, it enables the Foundational Security Best Practices and the CIS AWS Foundation's benchmark. You can enable PCI if you like. Let's just go ahead and leave the default. Now we just click Enable Security Hub. Now this is going to start the process of enabling Security Hub and start collecting all the information that I need for my organization. But one important step in order to effectively manage this at an organizational level, as you can see here, I've been prompted to enter a delegated administrator account. And this is very important because right now in this account, I am on the master account of the organization, but I want to be able to delegate to another account the administration of Security Hub. This is actually required. So let's go ahead and do that by clicking on this button. Now here I'm prompted for the delegated administrator account. Now I have my account ID here. I'm going to paste it, and then I'm going to click the delegate button. And now it says here that I have authorized that account to be the administrator account or the delegated administrator account for Security Hub. The next step that I have to do is go ahead and log in at that account so that I can make sure the Security Hub is enabled there and I can use it to administer my entire organization. Let's go ahead and do that now. So now I've logged on to my delegated administrator account and I've gone to the Security Hub. And as you can see, I'm immediately prompted to enable Security Hub for your organization in this region. So I'm going to go ahead and just say enable and accept that. I'm prompted to confirm. And as you can see, now my Security Hub is enabled for all the accounts in my organization. So Security Hub is going to start now tracking all its findings for all those accounts in this region. So this, as I said before, is a very effective way of taking care of that second line of defense and making sure you have a good mechanism to oversee risk across your entire organization.
Now that we've seen how to identify and remediate non-compliance, to complete that remediation, we need evidence of it. Now, AWS Audit Manager helps you continuously audit your AWS usage to simplify how you assess risk and compliance with regulations and industry standards. So Audit Manager automates evidence collection to reduce that all hands on deck manual effort that often happens for audits and enable you to scale your audit capability in the cloud as your business grows. So with Audit Manager, it's easy to assess if your policies, procedures, and activities that are also known as controls are operating effectively. When it's time for an audit, Audit Manager helps you manage stakeholder reviews of your controls and enables you to build audit-ready reports with much less manual effort, which is a key. AWS Audit Manager's pre-built frameworks help translate evidence from cloud services into auditor-friendly reports by mapping your AWS resources to the requirements in industry standards and regulations. So such as that CIS Foundations benchmark that we just spoke about, or the PCI DSS framework that we just spoke about. You can also fully customize a framework and its controls for your unique business requirements. For example, by deploying conformance packs, which group controls and allow you to deploy them in an automated and efficient way. So based on the framework that you select, Audit Manager launches an assessment that continuously collects and organizes relevant evidence from your AWS accounts and resources, such as resource configuration snapshots, user activity, compliance check results. And this can be done in a multi-account setup by integrating with AWS organizations. So let's watch a demo and see how Audit Manager works.
In this demo, I want to show you a little bit about AWS Audit Manager and how you can extend its native capabilities to fit your specific needs. We already know that AWS Audit Manager is a very powerful tool to address the third line of defense. That is, functions that provide evidence that you are managing risk at scale. AWS Audit Manager already provides a number of frameworks for the most popular compliance standards. Now, you can extend the power of AWS Audit Manager by creating your own frameworks that could be then in turn used to create assessments. The Configuration, Compliance, and Audit Jumpstart repo that we have contains a very good example of that. It's the example that we can find here in AWS Audit Manager Conformance Pack. Now, what does this do? Essentially, what it does is it takes the benefit of conformance packs and integrates them into AWS Audit Manager. For example, you may already have a conformance pack deployed in your organization to address NIST, and you may want to also at the same time create a correlating custom framework in Audit Manager to track those controls that are defined by that conformance pack. That's exactly what this solution does. And the way it does it is by combining a couple of interesting features. One of them is we deployed a CloudFormation template that is right here. There's two CloudFormation templates, one that creates the mappings and the other one that creates the custom assessment, as you can see here. Now, the way we create those mappings is by using a mapping file. This mapping file, there's a couple of examples here in the repo, are essentially, if we can take a look at it real quick, a CSV file that defines the control ID, the rule that is mapped to that control, and you can have multiple rules mapped to a specific control. So the idea of this is to show you the art of the possible and to show you how you can customize your frameworks and then create a custom assessment based on a conformance pack. In this case here, in this account that I'm going to show you, in this account here, I already have a conformance pack deployed for NIST CSF, as you can see here. If we click on it, we can see the individual rules and their current state. Now, what I want to do is take advantage of these rules that I have already deployed and create my own custom framework that I can use in Audit Manager. So to do that, you can deploy that CloudFormation template with that sample mapping file that I show you. Once you do that, let me show you how it will look in Audit Manager. Let's go to Audit Manager real quick. Now here in Audit Manager, if we click on Launch Audit Manager, we will see that we have a couple of assessments created here. But before I show you the assessments, let me show you the first thing that this solution creates. It creates a framework. And in the framework library, we have a number of frameworks here that are the ones that we provide. And we also have custom frameworks. So as you can see here, we have one that we have created using the CloudFormation template that is called Config Conformance Pack Custom Framework. If I click on it, I can see all the definitions of the controls, and they map exactly to the conformance pack that we have deployed in this account. As you can see, the data sources for these specific controls are AWS config rules, and you can see the names there. This is the information that was populated in the CSV file, and our CloudFormation template takes that and creates a custom framework. You can customize and tailor that CSV file to create your own custom frameworks based on conformance packs. Now, once we have that, once we have the framework, what we can do is create an assessment. And the assessment is going to take the definitions that we have established in the framework and collect the evidence based on that framework definition and the control sets that we have there. So as you can see, I have an active assessment here called Custom Conformance Pack Assessment. That's the one we deployed. And this assessment now contains all the control sets that I defined in the conformance pack, and is now collecting the information and the evidence that I need. Once this is collected, it's going to put them in this 3 bucket that I have defined for it and be ready for review.
Okay, now that we've seen how Audit Manager can complete that remediation cycle, I want to talk to you about some of the key takeaways that we want you to walk away with today. Now, one of those is starting with the 3 lines of defense, which is going to be a tactical approach to achieving effective governance using best practices. And remember, AWS provides a mapping of its suite of services to help you simplify and achieve compliance throughout your organization by leveraging the 3 lines of defense. The second key takeaway is data protection and how it's not only necessary for operational resiliency, but it's also necessary for compliance, for you to prove to auditors that you're following best practices. Now, one of the hot issues today is ransomware being a prevalent item. So it's important to design for resiliency here, considering when we think about ransomware, a lot of it is designed to affect your backups and shadow copies first in order to kind of make sure that you can't effectively back up your systems. So with tools such as Cloud Endure and AWS Backup, we can help you mitigate this potential risk. The third key takeaway is the art of the possible. Let's simplify compliance using tools that are designed to help you efficiently automate, mitigate, and then remediate risk from beginning to end, and allow you to prove to your auditors that you are effectively governing your systems. The next steps, we have some action items that we would love for you to take. We'd love for you to deep dive and take a look at the GitHub repo and the resources that we've provided for you. Browse the blogs. Related to what we've been talking about today, we have a great blog from one of our colleagues called Integrating Across the 3 Lines of Defense Model, Part 1. It'll help you build a custom automation of AWS Audit Manager integrated with AWS Security Hub. We think that would be something great for you to take from this session here. And also talk to your account team and see how we can get involved. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate you spending the time with us today. And thank you, Andres. We would love it if you could go ahead and fill out the survey for us. This always helps us improve. We would love your feedback. We work backwards from our customers, and that's what we're looking forward to do. Thank you, everyone.